Hey guys, it's Chris here from Chris's Creative Life, and I design workshops that help you create beautiful projects from start to finish with easy to follow guides. So I'm here today. I'm going to create a card with you all featuring the Floral Charms bundle. And I'm going to explain to you why. So I say this all the time, and that is that there's a couple of things that I think are really great tools for your creativity. And that is like playing with product actually helps you better use it. And we now, Stampin' Up! Has released some online exclusives that started in September. And I have finished, there's two fun things that I don't know if you've noticed. I'm going to add my desk in here because I'm just going to show you a couple of things and then we'll get started. Okay, so maybe we need to zoom just a little bit. Let's see. And hopefully that didn't make you seasick. Okay, and we're going to turn up this light just a little bit. And it is a beautiful day, and I literally just had to close my window because there's like a lot happening out there, but it was now all of a sudden it got super warm in my office, so I might have to open it again. Anyway, so Stampin' Up! in September has released their September. I just combined 2 months together, but their September to December mini catalog. I'm just looking for it in my office. Here it is. This one, and I'll have to pick up whatever I just dropped there after. So this is like a printed catalog, but also every couple of months we have some online exclusives. And the reason they do online exclusives, right, is there's a little bit more, that looks like it's going to fall, a little bit more flexibility. You can add things in, take them out with a little bit more, being a little bit more nimble, right? Versus an in-print catalog, right? You try and be in stock, have lots of them, predict what people are going to buy, etc. But with online exclusives, you can be a little bit more flexible. So as part of this online exclusive, there is a full product line, right, that was released in September for online exclusives, right? Some Christmas stuff, like a winter themed grouping, delicate pines. Then there's like standalone stamp sets, a couple pages of those. And then there are some additional products. And so I've just finished my Spooky Sweets scrapbooking workshop, and it's being proofed as we speak. And then next, I'm going to move on to the lovely Florals Designer Series paper and sticker sheet to create a workshop with. But always before I start to play with something or start to design with something, I like to play with it a little bit. So I thought it would be fun to create a card today just to kind of familiarize myself with the product again, because sometimes from when I first get it to when I actually get to play with it to create a workshop with it, it's been a little bit of time. So in August, I created this card, and it was to highlight the in color sale, right? So I thought, well, why don't we take this card and we'll recreate it using the products from the collection or suite, and that'll just kind of get my creative juices flowing. And then I always find it a little bit easier to start creating from scratch at that point. I'm not sure if that really makes sense, but this is actually beautiful paper. I loved it ever since it first came out. And then, so it actually came out, like the paper came out as an online exclusive in July, but they didn't have the sticker sheet ready to go until September. So I didn't start to create a workshop with it, like a scrapbooking workshop with it. And it wasn't necessarily on my radar for scrapbooking workshop until they released the sticker sheet too in the online exclusives. So that's behind me in the bucket. But Emmy is now right behind my desk. My dog, my doodle, is, so if I step down, she's going to jump and then we're going to have an accident. But if I remember, I'll pull out the sticker sheet at the end. But so this is the paper and they're beautiful. And so I think it's kind of a neat set of papers because it kind of goes like you've got spring, but you can also see like fall tones in here. So like I see these as also having like those fall autumn hues to them. So I decided to pick some of these papers and we're going to create that, like I said, that same card that I created with in colors, but we're going to use the lovely florals paper with it. Okay, so I did prepare a few things here, like I cut out my circles and that kind of stuff. So also, right, I am taking something that I've done before and just applying it to something new, which is also like a super great fun exercise. So the only thing I'm gonna keep the same pattern, but here I used all like strawberry slush, right? So but this was the paper that spoke to me. Let me just pull that back out again. You guys, I think I'm going to have to open my window because these lights are like hot. This was the piece of paper that spoke to me. So we're going to create using this kind of as like our jumping off point. So I pulled the colors from it. So I'm going to like feature the timid tiger and then the mossy meadow and then night of navy. So this was the piece of paper, right? So then I grabbed two other patterns that supported it. So that's this, the back piece of this one has that night of navy in it. And then this is the timid tiger, which is the other side of this pattern. So I have like a bunch of stuff here, but let's just dump it out. So originally I was trying to decide if we would do like a tone on tone card base with the night of navy. So I've just created a card base, right? 5.5 by 11. Oh my goodness, you guys. No, 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. Whew. See, the heat is getting to me. I'm gonna have to actually probably open the window. And I could either go with like a contrasting color with the timid tiger or night of navy. And I ran it through this embossing folder. So the Forever Plaid 3D embossing folder, right, which I did with this one. So this one I went with like the contrasting to the background, but then the same color as I used for all the decorative pieces of paper. But I think we're going to go with the timid tiger. And I just need to trim that a little bit. So at the same time, I'm going to open my window. And just hope that everybody's quiet up there. Okay. So I guess my piece was just larger when I ran it through the embossing folder. So let's just trim some off here. There we go. So, right, like it's the whole idea of doing something, taking something that you already like and doing something you like just as much to it. See, I open my window and then an airplane flies over top. Okay, so I'm going to put my night of navy piece aside. We're not going to use that. So now, like I said, I have 3 different patterns. So I'm going to kind of play with them on my card front. I want some like hanging off the side. And some will get covered up. And you can see here, right, that's where I'm going to put like that big cluster of flowers. So I'm also not really overly worried that they're different colors. So I'm just going to pick a spot and start, and then my pattern will kind of come together, and then I'm going to trim it off from the sides. So this circle is from the Stylish Shapes, and it is, I believe it's the middle one. Nope, I was wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4 from the outside. It's that one, which is like 1 7/8 ish. So, but that's where the circle came from, because I love the little decorative edges on the dies. So I'm just going to start with some hanging off. I have more circles than I need. And when I cut them off too, I can always use those pieces, right, to fill in the little spots if I need. That one I don't think I glued it down. So I'm just kind of trying to evenly space them, and it doesn't really like totally matter at all. But I just don't want them to be all like in a straight row. And you could totally do this with like any sort of scraps or like different amount of colors, right? Just with this image, I am making sure that like all my flowers are going in the right direction, so that my florals aren't like sideways on me. And for some of them, I even cut them out 2 at a time, just to make it go a little bit faster. And you could totally change up the shape too. It doesn't have to be this one, right? You could use any kind of shape or a punch. There's some super fun punch shapes that would totally work to cover your card front too. So I'm just going to trim it from the back, because I can see my line well. I'll just make sure my edges are down. So I could just flip it over and it makes it super easy to see the contrast. And I'll just save these, right, until I finish. The little tiny pieces, I'm not going to use those. But these I can use to fill in spaces if I need. Or you could use them on like a second version of the card too. You know, sometimes the idea is just the hardest thing to come up with. So to use the idea again is like, makes sense, right? Just switch it up a little bit. Changing the products, right? You could totally, like I said, you could totally. You like the blue and orange combination? I do too. And it's not something that I totally necessarily would have picked right off the hop. So, but like I said, I really liked, and see, I put it upside down. That's what I wanted to be careful of. I really liked this piece of paper. I kind of felt like, and I don't know that I actually need to add anything on my edges, but I could, or you could use these pieces on your edges if you wanted. I think it's a striking combination, right? Like, because there's so much contrast to it. So these, I'm just gonna, whoops, pull up. Okay, so then we're gonna adhere it to our card base. I had put a liner in there eventually, but next we're gonna do some painting with the floral images, and I'm just gonna make them a little more matchy-matchy to my paper that I've got going on here. Right, again, checking that my direction is the right way, and I wonder why. I know that you have to be careful of that, right? Okay, so I have the Charming Days stamp set, and then I grabbed this one, the Summer Vibes. That's where the thanks came from, but I think I'm going to use this hello on this card. And then I have some pre-stamped pieces. So we're going to use one of the small flowers. And then I need a second one because I don't know if you can see on this one, but I'm going to add a second layer just to give it a little bit more dimension. Okay, so I have a second one that we're going to fussy cut out. We'll use that one. And then I have like the full floral piece. Then I have the little thing here for my sentiment. Okay, so, yep, she's still really like right behind my chair, guys. So I'm going to stamp the thanks first, and then we'll do some watercolor painting with our inks. So we'll use the hello, just so that they're a little bit different. I have something sticky that is orange on my finger. That's hilarious. I'm not really sure where it came from, but okay. And then here for the ribbon, I've grabbed two different ones that I'm going to decide between, but I think I'm going to use the Timid Tiger one. I was thinking the Mossy Meadow and gold, but we'll have to see once we actually have, once I've painted the flowers. So I'm just going to stamp the hello with Night of Navy, and I really need to stand up. I just like slid the chair that way so not to hit her, but she's like literally right behind my chair. Fun. Okay, so maybe I can move a few things out of my way. there we go. I might stamp on the inside of the card too with the Night of Navy, so I'm going to keep that. But here we go. So that's going to go there. And like I said, it doesn't really matter about the combination because lots of it is going to get covered up. So here we go. I have Timid Tiger. I'll do that first. And I can't squeeze the ink pads hard enough to get ink into the top of my lid. So I just use re-inker in the tops of my lids to paint with. But you don't have to. You can totally just use, like if you squeeze them really hard, you can get ink into the top. You can see I got just a little bit. But I have a hard time doing that, so I just use the re-inkers. Okay, so I just have a water brush, which I'm super excited that because Stampin' Up! Lost their distributor for, the distributor had discontinued the water painters. So they had to pull them, and we weren't going to have them as a product, but they found a new distributor. So the water painters are back, which I love because I love anything kind of inky, messy like this. So I'm just going to do my Flowers Timid Tiger, and we're going to build up some color here. So I'm just kind of really like messy watercoloring. And it's dry. If you want more of like a watercolory look. So also, right, like lots of this one gets covered up. So I'm not uber worried that it's perfect watercoloring. So I'm going to set that aside to dry for a few seconds. And we'll play with this one. I think I just have a little bit too much water on there. And two, if you lay down the water. So for the one that goes underneath, I still did paint it. Because you can kind of see it out of the side. So I still wanted there to be color on the flower. This is like such easy watercoloring, right? You can't really make a mistake. So now I'll do, so right, and the reason I did decide to like keep the technique the same is because I think this piece of paper really lends itself to that same idea. Oh, there it is. It went flying. I'm like, where did my Mossy Meadow go? So the green is the Mossy Meadow. I could have gone a little bit lighter with Old Olive also. But I thought we're already going for big contrast, so let's just continue. Okay, so here, though, I might add a little bit of water to my leaves and then pick up some of the watercolor and tap it in to get more kind of the watercolor look. And this is just regular, what size circles? You just woke up. Okay, they are, where did those dice go? So you can use any size circle. You can also do the same thing with the squares, right? But so this is from the Stylish Shapes, and I used 1, 2, 3, the fourth from the outside. And I always just have like spares in here, and so I just laid them down to kind of play with the size to determine, because I wanted to be able to get enough pattern on the card that the circles weren't too large. Or too small that then I had 800 and it kind of created its own pattern, and then you didn't need to really add anything onto the card, if that makes sense. You could also just pick a piece of the pattern paper for the background. So this is just regular paper, so I can't like add crazy amounts of water to it. but I can still add enough that I can kind of get the look that I'm going for, right? Because I really wanted to just mimic. There you go. It's really pretty. And like I said, it's really pretty just with the strawberry slush. So if you just wanted to do one color too, it totally works. So some of them, I'm just adding a little bit of water down so I get a little bit lighter leaves. And then some I'll make a little bit darker. Oh, thanks, Lynn. And then, like I said, for this one, we'll do the double layer there. We'll decorate a little bit of the inside of the card. I see I've got lots of water on my desk. So, and you see my fancy water mug here. I prefer that to having water in my brush, but you can totally just have water in your brush. And like I said, my new, because I somehow managed to, in my office, lose my old water painters. So I'm super excited that they're back. And I have a new set on the way. So, and if you get too much, that's okay. You can just use it on your other leaves. And you don't want it to look perfect, right? That's I think the trick to watercoloring is you don't want it to be perfect. You don't want it to all be like colored in, because then you might as well have used blends, if that makes sense. But like I said, this is just regular paper, so I can't go like super crazy. But this is the one I'm going to fussy cut out, right, for my top layer here. So I'm going to add a little bit more to this one, but I actually think I want to do something in my centers here. So let's get Darling Duckling. I'll just lightly, and see, I already have some in here. So and I don't need to do those leaves, right, because I'm going to trim it out. If I need more Darling Duckling in the center, I can. Okay, so this is relatively dry. And I love how all the leaves actually are not the same, right? So the leaves are still wet, but you can see as they dry, right, there's all different, right? Just like in your garden on a rose bush, right? Not all the leaves look the same. As like fall comes, right, they start to get darker and stuff. So, but I'm going to add a little bit more of my stronger color, and I'm just going to kind of tap it in closer to like the bottom of my petals where it would normally be darker. Okay, and I had a little bleed there we might have to fix, but actually I don't actually even mind that. And I thought that it was kind of fun because the color combination is so different than this version. Okay, while this dries back a little bit, I'm going to fussy cut out this one. As soon as I take the little extra piece I have on my scissors off. And I might just really quickly hit this with my heat tool, just so that my paper is not still damp when we try and put it together. Okay, so, right, I'm going to use, because I want to actually even be able to bend my, not bend, but mold my flower a little bit. So I'm just going to tap in. So this one I'm not overly worried about coloring, right, because you're only going to see it underneath. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of the Timid Tiger to the bottoms of the petals. like closest to the center, and give that a second to dry. I might just fix my leaf there so you can't see quite as much orange. I think I want a little more color on this one. So I'm just laying it in the middle there because that's where it would be darker. Okay, I'm just actually going to close these because you all know me. Oh, I need Timid Tiger still for the inside of my card. So we're just going to push that back just a little bit. If you have a lot of water too, you can also push your ink with your heat tool. I do actually prefer things to dry naturally, but you guys don't want to be here all day. So okay, I'm just going to give those a few seconds as soon as I can find my off. Because we also, like the last thing I need in my studio today is a heat tool blurring. So let's quickly do a little bit to a liner here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of ink blending on the bottom here. I'm going to add just a little strip of coordinating cardstock or paper. And then by then we can probably adhere everything together. So I just have my orange, my blending brush for Timid Tiger, which is a strong color. So, and I don't really want it crazy strong. But also I know that I'm going to have this piece of paper at the bottom, right? So I can be a little bit darker down there because it's going to get covered up. So let's just see if that has a high, yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good for my guess. Okay. And then we will cut up the ribbon and get going. So let's just, sorry about the squeak. Okay. There we go. Close this up so I don't have another accident. There, my color combination. So I do think, oh, I don't know now. Okay, so let's add, you guys, you know what? I added it upside down. Okay, so we're going to be gentle. I was being all, making sure all my floral was going the right direction, and then I put it on my card upside down. Okay, we can move that out of the way. Okay, so let's add our liner. So while this is still a little bit damp, I'm just manipulating the flower with my fingers to give it some curl, right? Because I want it as a second layer here to add dimension to this flower, right? So while it's still a little bit wet and I can manipulate it very easy. Okay, so then let's add our liner. That was a nice save, I must say myself. Just be gentle if you have to pull up. Okay, and then these would also have been cute to add to the inside, like off the liner in a couple of spots, but we didn't do that. But there's another idea. So I just have like a kind of little halo coming up. Oh, thank you. Okay, so now this is pretty dry. So I'm going to add this down, and then we will audition our two So you can tell already that it doesn't really matter that I have two of the blue side by side, right? Because you're not going to actually be able to really tell once I build up this spot. Okay, so for this, I took the strawberry slush ribbon and I cut it, I shredded it up. So, but I actually think we're going to use the Mossy Meadow, but I'll do the same thing with it. It won't look exactly the same, but let's say I'll do extra here. I think that's more than I need. So, oh, look at that. Emmy moved from behind my chair again, so I could sit back down. So for this one, I'll show you on the Timid Tiger. I think I cut this one into 3. And it's just like a fun, different way to use the ribbon, right? So if I was, let's just say this was the whole length of the piece I wanted to use. I cut it, for sure I cut it into 3s. But so I normally use a longer scissor. Let's just pull out. Because it just makes it a little bit easier. And I'm just holding it in my hand. Being very careful not to cut myself with my scissors. Ask me how I know. Okay, and then I would cut this piece again. And I don't go, like, I'm not trying to go fast. And I don't care if it's perfect, to be super honest with you. Because it's kind of more fun if it's not. Okay, so then I took these strands and I ran my fingers over the edges, almost rough them up even a little bit more. And then I created my bundle with them, right? Because I wanted little ends hanging off and extra pieces just to kind of give it more of a rustic-y look in there. But we're going to do this one. And I think I'm only going to cut this one in half. So I probably could have done this beforehand, but I wasn't quite sure which one I would use. I thought for sure I would use the Timid Tiger, and then I grabbed this one at the last second, and it's the Mossy Meadow and Gold trim. So, and I probably have extra than I need, but I could totally trim it down. Because I'm going to put this on next before I put that smaller floral on. This is where I need, like, you know, elevator music. We're almost at the end though. But it's best that I pay attention and don't cut myself. Because guys, I've like been like totally accident prone lately. Just trying to do too much at the same time, right? So, yes. And this kind of will, so one side of it's finished because each side of the ribbon is finished. But we get some fun little fraying happening. Okay. And it's all connected to me because my fingers are sticky and dry. Okay. So I know I want it here and I want it like about the width of my hand. So I'll put some tails hanging off the end. And I can wrap it around. Just, yeah, I think that's probably pretty good. And I can pull out the ends and get different lengths too. And let's just looking for something to weight it down so it doesn't actually like, there we go. Okay, so I've just got another little piece and I'm just going to use this to tie it together, and then we'll get like another little bit of, I guess actually I could have just used the orange one, the timid tiger that I already cut in half or thirds, but oh well, there we go. Okay, so now I can just tie this together. Okay, and I'm going to leave my ends long until we get the rest of the pieces down onto the card. Okay, so I want my thanks for right here. So I'm going to add some dimensionals on the sides. And I'm just going to add a glue dot right there. And that will hold my ribbon in place. There we go. We can add our hello. And actually, we could even stamp this on the inside, right? Can't wait to see you again soon. That would be cute. Okay, so now we just have this piece to add. So I'm going to add it like that. So I'm going to put dimensionals on the top and bottom. And then if I have to, I can kind of like tuck them in. And then I'll add my second layer. So I'm just kind of making the hello fit into the little, like the spot there on the floral image. The little nook and cranny kind of there. Okay, so, but we need to trim these because they're crazy. Okay, so then I'm just going to line this up and I'm going to adhere this with a glue dot. My glue dot were in my hand. Okay, and I'm just going to line up with the petals, right? So I can see that's the pokey out petal. And there we go. Now I'm going to add, so I have here the 2025 to 2027 in color flat pearls, my favorite. And I'm just going to tuck some of the, oh my goodness, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have very many Timid Tiger left here, but we have enough. It'll be okay. So let's move this out of the way. And this is tangled. I want this untangled. There. Pull it. There we go. We just have like a little fray to pull out. Just so it lays a little bit flatter. There we go. That's better. It needed a little bit of a haircut. It was getting out of control there. Okay, so let's add some pearls on here. I love, they just kind of like, just add enough of a little bit of a sparkle to bring everything together. Here we go. Okay, so there is our Charming Day version. Here's the in color version featuring Strawberry Slush. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was kind of fun little exercise in, like I said, I totally believe that like the more you play with the product, the better you get at using it, and also then like reusing things that you've already done to inspire like a next idea or a next idea kind of thing. So thanks, Jane. I know. So Jane just said, I love the Floral Charm Suite. It's beautiful. And I think that actually the funny thing is it kind of snuck up on me because I didn't really pay attention to it at first when it came out in July. And then, but it's got like, I've had lots of fun. You're very welcome. Good luck at work tonight. Or I guess today, because you just woke up. So that's the fun part, right? Like, because Golly's on the other side of the world, right? So as I'm entering my evening, it's her daytime. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And actually, I think like any of the combinations, you could totally do this with, right? And like I said, it kind of almost makes me feel like there's like this kind of line feels more fall-like to me, right? So, but I actually think it would look great in any of the combinations of the papers because like some of them are super rich. And I think that's the fun part too about how the stamp set works too, because, well, for starters, the floral image from the Charming Day stamp set is beautiful. And there's so many different things you can do with it, right? Like just because I did like full watercoloring, you can use watercolor pencil crayons, you can use blends, right? Like any of those fun things with it. So enjoy, and I hope you all have an awesome day wherever you are. Talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.